welcome in here to the Triple Threat Podcast NBA Restart Special. TJ Savaro, Steven Strom. We've been waiting to do this. We are on camera. TJ has this ring thing that he brought over here. It's official. I feel like I'm part of the Bree and Tej podcast a little bit here. We are on the camera right now. Tej has the sleeveless shirt. I bet if you would have made a bet who would have went sleeveless on here, it would have been me. But we are here. The NBA is back. Tej, how we doing?
I'm good, man. I've been sleeveless every day this summer.
You have?
I'm Penny, Jersey guy. It's just too hot. It's too hot for the sleeve, but that would have been a good prop bet. Who would have been sleeveless on the show?
I love the light. I mean, my God, I look tanner as ever.
Steve is feeling himself. I told him he needs to get the ring light. This is kind of basic setup what me and Brianna do for the Bree and Tej podcast. So of course, go subscribe to the YouTube channel as well.
Of course, gotta plug it.
But yeah, we're super hyped for the NBA. We told you guys we were coming with the NBA special. This is gonna come out on Tuesday. We're recording it on Sunday right now. So if any breaking news happens from now until then, that will probably be our luck. But we're ready to go with the NBA restart. We're ready to jump in full hour NBA show today. So
we've been holding back. Yeah, we've been holding back a little bit. So we are back, and the NBA returns July 30th. We've got Pelicans, Jazz, and we got our game, Clippers, Lakers. We'll be watching that together. But we know the first round doesn't start until August 17th. We've got 8 games to play here. Let's just first start with the overall thoughts. Have you been watching any of the scrimmages on NBA TV? I know you have. What are some of the things that we've kind of looked at here early on when trying to feel out these teams?
First thing I will say, I love the intensity that has been being played within these scrimmages. A lot of the things so for a guy like a J.R. Smith, right?
Yeah.
He comes in and plays super hard defense because not only is he playing for this season, he kind of like a Carmelo Anthony situation. He wants to be playing next year and years on after that. You see guys like Dion Waiters, and I'm talking about the Lakers now, but you're seeing a lot of different lineups with the Nuggets. We're going to get into all that being experimented. I think the level of play in the scrimmages has looked great. I think the 0 positive test in the NBA has allowed all of this to happen. They've done a great job with that. The players who have been vlogging it, JaVale McGee, Matisse Thybulle, they do a great job covering it. I think the NBA has been, we expected them to be great, but now that it's actually happened, that it turned out to be running this smoothly, I think it's a big tip your cap to the NBA here.
It's a tremendous sign when, I think it was Woj, someone came out with the tweet that they had 0 positive cases. This is why you did the bubble. There should be no reason Lou Williams going to get food at a gentleman's club. Better excuse. I mean, you're gonna go. If there's one thing to go to like a restaurant to get food, you're going to a gentleman's club and you're gonna claim that you're gonna get food. Enough with that. Anyway, my Clippers aren't focused. I don't know what they're doing. But 0 cases, that's a huge thing because this is why you made the bubble, and there should be no disruption going forward here. If everyone follows the protocol and the rules, there should be no issue by the time we get to the playoffs. Nothing should happen. We should get a full, healthy roster of teams, and I don't want any asterisk, nothing next to it. But yes, going back to what we were saying about the scrimmages, first thing that I saw was I felt like the guys were in pretty good shape. Yeah. I honestly thought it was more about the chemistry, more about the timing, especially I watched the Denver-Washington game, and it was a little sloppy just with the turnovers, just the timing, because these guys, yes, it's one thing to work out on your own, but it's another thing to be dropped into a game with your teammates that you haven't really played with for a long time. So I think that's more of what I was looking at, the chemistry aspect of things. I saw Kentavious Caldwell-Pope throw a nice little lob to AD. I saw some things that I liked from certain teams from a chemistry standpoint. But I think going into this, it was more about, well, who's healthy, who's in shape, who's not. I think for the most part, these guys stayed in shape. We saw Giannis come out and say, I was just trying to get ahead of people by saying I wasn't going to work out. He's been working out. So I think from that standpoint, it's been pretty good.
I think that the professional athlete doesn't get enough credit by just like the average person who talks about sports or casual fans who enjoy sports. They're like, oh, well, these guys could be at home sitting on their ass not really, doing anything. No. These guys are working out, continuous repetition.
They should. They have nothing else. That's their job.
And that's their job. That's what they get paid to do. So I fully expected them to come out in good shape. The chemistry point that you bring up with it, I think what we've seen so far in these scrimmages has been a lot of different lineups. And you mentioned the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's what I call that is a flex. Like, what team in the NBA besides Denver can do that? So the most skilled bigs in the NBA, passing-wise, guys that come off the top of my mind, you got Jokic, super skilled. Bam Adebayo, super skilled. DeMarcus Cousins, when healthy, very skilled passer. Then you look at guys like Mason Plumlee, who's on the Nuggets, super skilled. Mason Plumlee could get the ball for his whole career since really Duke. He's been bringing it up the floor, taking it coast to coast. Now you got my guy, Bol in the mix.
Oh my God, I was taken back by him, bro.
He looks incredible. Michael Porter Jr., we haven't even seen him with that big lineup. They're playing guys they're playing 5 guys. They're running a little bit of a 3-2 zone, 2-3 zone on defense. And they're playing 5 bigs. What other team in the NBA could do that?
And I'm glad you just mentioned that because I the 2-3 zone aspect, because I do think you're going to see teams. Now, right now we see the conditioning. It does remind you a lot like Summer League, little AAU-ish in it. But I do think you're going to see teams like Houston, like these other teams that may not defend as well or match up as well playing a small ball lineup. I think to protect people's conditioning, you might see, we know how much easier it is to play zone. It's not the same intensity, I think, than a man-to-man. You don't have to be as alert. If you're in a zone, you've got guys that are covering you. With man-to-man, you're in a stance. You're constantly, your head's on a swivel. Do we see teams sort of go to that zone early on here to see if it works and throw off maybe the other team's shooting ability and almost have a sustainable energy to your team? So that's another interesting point because I saw that teams were going zone. Will that sort of be a strategy going forward?
We've seen a lot of more like matchup zones in the NBA throughout the last few years. 2 years ago, Kenny Atkinson, D'Angelo Russell, Nets. They went to that matchup zone a lot, with certain lineups.
You saw the Heat do it a couple times with LeBron.
I just think you can't do it for an entire game. In the NBA, they're too good, they're too skilled.
They'll figure
shooting,
it out.
passing, they figure it out. You can't do it for the entire game. But in stints, you could do it because it disrupts the flow of the game. It disrupts the other team's offense and what they want to do. And then maybe you're forcing them kind of into, maybe a Rockets case where you're forcing them into a track meet where you have to shoot threes.
Yeah.
And let's get it up and down. Let's have a 3-point shooting contest. Let's do this. That's the kind of way that a team like that wants to play. I just think, with the scrimmages, with this bubble, you're going to see a lot of experimental lineups, defenses, offenses.
This is the time to do it.
Yeah.
We have a lot to get into. Again, we're just sort of giving an overview of what we've seen so far with the scrimmages. We have best bets for you. We'll apply that from the pod to here. We're basically going to go through the top teams. We won't waste time with teams like Washington, but I do want to get into some segments, necessary or luxury. I texted you about that. Yeah. Certain teams that we'll look at. Who benefits the most / least. Biggest question, I think, of the entire restart we'll get into. But let's first dive into when you're at least trying to get a feel for predictions and looking at rosters. For me, I'll start. I think I'm going to look at teams that thrive in chaos because this is sort of a chaotic scramble into a season and you're going to have no fans. It's just going to be weird. So I'm looking at teams that really thrive in chaos, and I think for most part, I'm going to lean towards the youthful teams because you just look at veterans. They're in grooves. They have to. I was watching them in a different sport, but DeMarcus Ware needed 2 hours and a half just to warm up for practice, And I bet there are certain guys that definitely need to be a little bit more careful towards the end of their careers versus a guy like Ja Morant, where I feel like you can throw out Ja and he's ready. You don't even need to stretch. So those are the two things that I'm leaning on. When you're betting, when you're looking at different teams, I think thriving in chaos, a Houston Rockets team, and then sort of a youthful, younger team like, off the top of my head, Denver or whatever it may be. Those are the teams that I'm looking at specifically when I'm trying to get a feel for who I want going forward.
It's interesting to me that you say that because I kind of feel the opposite way.
About which one?
The age, yeah.
The age.
I think that for this, I'm leaning more towards veteran teams.
Okay.
Maybe veteran head coaches, organizations who have been there and done that before.
You don't think if you put a 4-month wrench into a veteran's shape or whatever it may be, let's just take LeBron. It's a bad example because he's just an outlier in every scenario. But if you interrupt a 4-month routine that they are in, you don't think that? I think that hurts way more the older player than the younger player.
I agree with that sentiment. Okay. That these guys, they train their bodies and they're used to the marathon, and then it kind of.
And that's just age. It's easier to get back into it than an older player.
But it's not like these guys. I'm not talking about like 40-year-olds. I'm not talking about like Udonis Haslem, who I'm leaning on. I'm talking about like I consider Kawhi like 29 years old. He's older. He's not like he's not like a 24-year-old Ben Simmons. He's still older. Paul George older. LeBron, AD. Even though AD's young, he's 28, 29 years old. Yeah. He's still. You know what I mean? He's still someone I consider a veteran. So I like the veteran teams here. I like the Rockets. I know, and most of the veteran teams are at the top of the NBA right now anyways. But I think the young teams, like a team like the Pelicans, when I think of a young team.
Is Zion in or what? Like, what's going on?
No, Zion came back to the bubble last night. Let's see, the NBA, their first game is on Thursday. I'm pretty sure they're going to bend a little bit of protocol so Zion gets in there. But take a young team like the Pelicans. I could see in like the regular season portion of the bubble, they could just come out and blow his team off the floor because Lonzo's going to push the pace, Drew Holiday's going to push the pace, Brandon Ingram, Zion, like they have a lot of athleticism that could overwhelm you in that regular season.
The other key thing is youth.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. I think they could overwhelm you with their youth and athleticism in that 8-game regular season. But I think it reverts back to the playoffs. Once the playoffs come, slow the game down. Veterans take smart shots, smart possessions. The young guys still got to figure it out. I don't think they could just... If it was like a one game, like an NCAA type of style tournament, then yes. But in a 7-game series, the veterans are still going to take over, in my opinion.
Again, we're doing the TTP NBA Restart Special here. 20-minute increments we're doing this. It's Teja's camera. So we got 9 minutes left here for our first little segment. I don't know how many we're going to do. We're just going to just talk and go. Let's first get into the first topic. Yeah. Okay, and that is... who benefits the most / least here? Tej, you may begin with your team for the most or least. Where are you going to start here?
I'll say the team that benefits the most out of going to the bubble, and this is a new answer from me.
Okay.
I'm going to say the Toronto Raptors.
Okay.
They're the defending champions. I was watching them play on the scrimmage last night. Their roles on that team, Nick Nurse probably going to win Coach of the Year. Their roles on that team are so defined.
Yep.
Pascal Siakam is a stud. He had a great beginning of the year, kind of got injured, was still an All-Star, but people forgot about him a little bit. Still sitting at the 2 seed in the East. Kyle Lowry, who I have a new respect for after last season and then the All-Star game, and I just think, it's fun. I think it's funny. I think it's funny that Kyle Lowry's taking charge of the All-Star game, but I like his intensity. He's a veteran. Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, who missed the playoffs last year, is kind of back now and playing really well for them. He's the only guy on their team who hasn't missed a start this season. I think, Boucher, they have a lot of guys.
And they got to lick their wounds, man, with Gasol and Ibaka and those guys.
There's a lot of veterans, like I just talked about, coming back, defending champions. You still got to knock them off. Yeah. In the East, we don't have any proven champions right now except for the Toronto Raptors. So I think that this benefited them. Everyone's back healthy. They were kind of injury-riddled team throughout the season. They're back. They're a cohesive unit. And I think that their roles are probably more defined than any one other team in the league right now, maybe outside of Milwaukee.
Love the example. I think it's 100% dead on. When you're looking at teams, again, just a lot of this is going to go back to just us gambling, because I think part of the comfort in picking a team that's roles are defined is that there's no question marks. Like we just talked about J.R. Smith. J.R. Smith is going to have to ramp it up. Not only is he going to be thrown into the fire, he's going to be on the spotlight. He's going to have the Ring camera on him.
Yeah.
And other teams that are looking maybe to sign veteran players next year, it's on J.R. Smith. So this is a guy that hasn't played for the Lakers all year. When you have a Toronto team that has their roles that are defined, that has, it's talk about next man up mentality. Yeah. They have been the example of that. So I like that example for most. I think for me it's in a generic answer, but I'm going to go Philly here. I think if anyone needed a reset on the season, it was Philly. And they are one of those teams that can catch lightning in a bottle. I still believe that Embiid and Simmons, and this was actually, I think, my pick, they were number 2 or 3 on my power rankings when he did it in the beginning of the season. I watched a little bit of their scrimmage today. They are a team that can wear you down defensively. They've got dudes with length, with athleticism, that if they're able to just kind of lock in defensively, they can wear teams out. Offensively is where I think is the biggest question. We've heard about Simmons possibly moving to the 4. I wouldn't get caught up too much into that. I don't think it's about who starts for Brett Brown in the 76ers more than who finishes. I want to see the closing 5 lineup. You saw Horford might go to the bench to start the game. I still think that's a good move. Who's going to finish the game for Philly? I think Philly benefits most for this NBA reset.
Speaking on Philly, I thought Ben Simmons was the most impressive player to me throughout the scrimmages. Moving him to that 4 spot, Steve, what it did, now he's the screener in the pick and roll. He shot 2 threes the other night.
And made one.
And Steve, I think you could even say this, that I've been saying this, you could give me my props here. I've been wanting someone to say this, but I have been saying it to you. It's never the question of, is Ben Simmons going to make or miss threes? I was always saying, Just shoot them.
Just take them. Yeah.
Even if you make it at 27-30%, it's gonna be. It's good enough.
I saw that he's trying to go to like a special psychologist. Just shoot the ball.
Just shoot it.
You've been playing basketball for X amount of years. Shoot it, and if it's so terrible and dreadful, and you shoot 15%. Go to the. You don't even know what you're gonna shoot.
Yeah.
You could all of a sudden flip the script and shoot 38%, and there's no psychologist coming for you. Try, like you said,
just
be willing.
Just get him up. And I think him playing on that screener in the pick and roll, playing on the dunker spot, he's getting rebounds, pushing it. We know Ben Simmons could defend 1 through 5, one of the best defenders in the league.
Yeah.
And now that you have Shake Milton out there, who's a very good shooter, the floor is way more space. I know Embiid made some threes the other night too. I still don't love him in the playoffs shooting a bunch of threes, but I think Ben Simmons at the 4, not only could it help save Brett Brown's job and bring him back for next season, I think it makes Philly a legitimate title contender this season, whereas before the move, I don't think they were.
You know, when I talked to Howard Beck this weekend, I actually asked the same question: who benefits the most? What are you sort of leaning towards? He said, we're just going off of what we know from March. I disagree in the sense that if we were in March and it continued on, we would have sort of wrote off Philly. Philly is a live dog. Houston is a live dog. We'll get into that in a little bit here. We got 2 more minutes. Let's finish up. 3 more minutes. Sorry, that's the math coming in. 17 minutes. Let's go benefits the least here.
Okay.
Go.
I think that benefits the least, who it hurts the most, really. Yeah. I'm going to say the Clippers.
Okay.
And I say this because Lou Williams out of the bubble we just talked about. Patrick Beverley out of the bubble. Montrezl Harrell out of the bubble. What was my biggest concern with the Clippers coming in? They have all these moving pieces. They haven't played together.
The opposite of Toronto.
No one has played together yet. And this isn't even TJ hates the Clippers, kind of a thing. This is me with legitimate concern for them because they haven't played together yet. Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris, Joakim Noah we saw in the starting lineup the other day. Harrell's out, Pat Bev's out. We don't know. There's sliding doors everywhere.
Yeah,
people are moving in and out for their team. I think if they're going to win a championship, which is it's championship or bust for this team,
1000%.
You have to be hitting on all cylinders, and I don't think they are right now.
TJ hates the Clippers.
I do, but this isn't one of those. This is an actual
I do feel like talent is the most important piece to it, and I think LA's got that ability to just sort of take over and just, I guess, win based off talent. But I agree that they still need to figure out. And Lou Williams, I mean, that's like going to Go-Go Rama for chicken fingers. Yeah. I mean, don't please responsibility. You got 3 months. Calm down. Minute and a half here. Least I'm gonna go with the Bucks here. Okay, and I know what you're thinking probably. Oh, Giannis was hurt, Steven. Now he's back. I really have a feeling, and I'll unveil our East picks. I don't like that the Bucks don't have home court advantage. I was looking at the stats last year. Let's just take away the series against Detroit. Detroit didn't have Blake Griffin. I'm not going to count the record. They went 2-0 on the road. 2-3 against Boston and the Raptors on the road. A huge part about the Bucks is their home court advantage. And here's the next thing about the reset. You look at a guy like George Hill, for example. He shot 48% from 3. Is he going to be able to sustain that? He just missed 3 months of a season. It was huge for the Bucks. And also, I still don't trust Eric Bledsoe. Guys like Dante DiVincenzo, Pat Connaughton, I like them. I don't love them. I think there's a lot more teams in the East that are deeper than I can trust than Milwaukee. So I think that they benefit the least, or I guess in this case, struggle the most coming back here because of the reset.
I think that I hear what you're saying, but when I watched the scrimmage the other night, they looked very sharp to me. Maybe it was because it was a scrimmage, and maybe it was because they're playing some inferior opponent. But I think Giannis gonna win MVP. He's extremely dominant. Obviously home court would help them. It would help the Lakers tremendously.
Yeah.
But still, I don't believe in Bledsoe necessarily in the playoffs. I don't believe in maybe Brook Lopez shooting corner threes in the playoffs. But I do think that we haven't been giving enough credit to Chris Middleton, myself included. He's like a 40, 50, 90 guy. He's another all-star again this season. I don't think it's a lock for the Bucks to go to there, but the home court advantage absolutely hurts them in the long run.
All right, next thing we want to get into is the luxury or and I guess necessary sort of topic here. We're going to go through teams, and we are going to go through what is necessary for them to go on here and make a run in the postseason, and a luxury, something that doesn't necessarily have to happen but would be great if it did. TJ, we will start. We're not going to go like with the Wizards or the Brooklyn Nets. We're going to go with these top teams that are legitimate title contenders. What do you want to start here? East or West, TJ? It's totally up to you.
Let's start with the West. We'll start in the West.
So would you like to start with your LA Lakers?
We'll start with the Lakers.
Okay.
They have the luxury of having LeBron James and Anthony Davis, right? So that's the obvious luxury. You're going to have two of the best 5 players in the world on your team at all times, probably playing 45 minutes a game in the playoffs.
Okay.
LeBron, you'll probably see some 48-minute games, maybe Anthony Davis 42. Who knows? They have the luxury of having 2 of the 5 best players. Now, what is necessary for them to win it all, which is their ultimate goal, is you lose Avery Bradley. Rondo's out right now. So the backup point guard situation, the ball handler situation is not good right now. Alex Caruso, I like him more so off the ball when LeBron's on the floor rather than him running the show, right? I think that you're going to have one of J.R. Smith, Alex Caruso, Dion Waiters step up completely, I'm not in on. I count Dion.
You think it has necessarily that's an automatic?
I think Danny Green automatically will be good in the playoffs for the Lakers. That's my assumption on him. I talked about him last year in the finals, last year in the playoffs. I'm in on Danny Green being very good for them. I'm sold on it. I think the question marks, J.R. Caruso, Dion Waiters, you're going to need another guy who's contributing scoring. Kyle Kuzma, who we saw the other day, I will also throw into that list. You're going to need one of those 4 guys to be on any given night. It doesn't have to be them consistently. On any given night, one of those guys is going to have to do some of the scoring load and come out there and get some buckets, because if we're counting Rondo out, if we're not counting Rondo in right now, we're saying he's out. They don't have a lot of scoring options, playmaking options outside of LeBron James. So
yeah, I mean, I think a luxury to that team would to get someone like a J.R. Smith, Dion Waiters, like that's sort of like a reach dream, and that would be a luxury like we're talking about here. I think the necessary part of this is it's got to be a third option and a consistent one that you're going to get. You're going to have to get a guy like Kyle Kuzma that's going to come in and score 15, 20 points efficiently.
Yeah.
That's the big thing with Kuzma, because we know he can fill it up, but there are times where I can question, is this guy a efficient scorer or a high volume scorer that needs to take a specific amount of shots? If Kyle Kuzma can play anywhere near like he did a couple days ago, maybe it just was yesterday, the Lakers, I'll say this, the Lakers are going to win the finals if they are able to get that work from Kyle Kuzma. I just think for the luxury part of it, I don't know what to expect from a guy like Dion Waiters. Dion Waiters has always been one of those guys that can catch lightning in a bottle, but can also shoot you out of a game.
Absolutely.
So there are highs and lows to J.R. Smith as well. The luxury for the Lakers is if they can figure out if they can get a certain amount of minutes / points / efficiency, not from the offensive side of the ball. I think defensively is where guys like Dion Waiters and J.R. Smith struggle mostly. The Lakers are really deep, I think, defensively. I think that's where they're going to win a lot of their games. But can they get that third scoring option from Kyle Kuzma? That's going to be necessary for them to win a title.
I couldn't agree more. I think, we haven't seen the Lakers play in a while, obviously, but when they came out the other day, and I'm like, wow, defensively, their length, the way they protect the rim, block shots, I forgot that the foundation of this team really is defensively, so I do agree with their defensive depth.
Let's go to their neighbors, the Los Angeles Clippers, who we know, it's been a Clippers versus Laker podcast for the most part here. I think for the Clippers, the necessary part of this is to make sure that their 1-2 punch is healthy and ready to go. We never hear anything on Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. They're very discreet about it. The Los Angeles Clippers have not made anything obvious. They like to keep things in-house. It is 1,000% necessary for those two to be at it 100%. I am more worried about Paul George. That's definitely a guy that, when he gets into the postseason, it's a guy that is a little on the fringe of he can, that's sort of his mantra. He had what was it? It was a elimination game.
2 for 16.
You have it, Tej. OKC, this is the guy. I know what I'm getting from Kawhi Leonard.
Yep.
I know what I'm getting from Kawhi. What am I getting from Paul George? It is necessary for him to be on point and to get his 20 to 25 and dominate defensively. I think a luxury for this team is to make sure that Marcus Morris and guys like Pat Beverly stay within their role, especially Markieff Morris, who is known for coming out and trying to shoot and try to almost take over games. He's got a little J.R. Smith cuckoo in him, where he's sort of, the way he sees the game is differently than any other player or analyst that are watching the game. Yeah, himself, exactly. So I think if you can get, it's a luxury, because you know you're going to get dumb shots from JR. You know you're going to get dumb shots from Marcus Morris. Is it Markieff or Marcus?
Marcus
Morris.
Markieff is on the Lakers.
Markieff is on the Lakers. If you can hold him in check, that's definitely a luxury for this team. But I really, this is my pick, man. This has been my pick for a while. I think it's going to take a lot from the Lakers side of the ball to beat them in a best-of-7 series. This is for another segment, but that's my luxury and necessary for the Clippers.
I think the luxury for the Clippers, and this is luxury best-case scenario in the perfect world, Joakim Noah could be a big factor for their team. And I listen, I'm not a Joakim Noah fan at all. I don't think he's been good for several years.
Yeah.
When the Knicks signed him, I was like, why the hell are you signing Joakim Noah for all that money? But he could be a big, active, annoying kind of, thorn in your side for a guy like LeBron. Even though LeBron has dominated him throughout his playoff career, I think he's 16-5 against him in the playoffs, something like that. But I think bringing him in where we were kind of, I've been saying to you, Steve, where are they going to stop guys like Anthony Davis, Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee? Okay, we like Montrezl Harrell. I love Montrezl Harrell, but I'm not sold on Zubac, and outside of that, Patrick Patterson. So I think them getting Joakim Noah, and then you could throw Reggie Jackson in this as well, because I've been saying
they're deep, man.
They need a playmaker. So the luxury would be, okay, the guys that we brought in, they are going to reach their full potential, right?
I put Reggie in the same category as J.R. Smith and Morris too, because he can also be one of those guys that think that he can. Yes.
The necessary things for them to happen, that has to happen in order for them to win the championship. Paul George is going to have to break that, kind of playoff spell that's been on him, like you said. And
little David Price in him that he needs to break.
That's a great comparison. I love Paul George. Maybe not so much because now he's on the Clippers, but I do love Paul George. I think he's one of the most skilled, wingmen in the game. Maybe in terms of just pure handle, maybe of all time. I don't know guys that are 6'10" that can handle the ball like that. Like, Paul George's talent is supreme.
He's not 6'10".
Yeah, 6'10" Paul George. He grew 2 inches when he came into the NBA.
I didn't know that.
Paul George should not be, 2 for 16 in elimination.
Never.
We know Kawhi's going to give us this. And I also want to say what's very necessary for the Clippers, Doc Rivers is going to have to do his best job ever as a head coach. Because I've been saying it all year, they don't have a true point guard playmaker. So a lot of their points are going to have to come off of sets, quick hitters, good plays, good motion, and in making sure the game flow continues to stay where you want it to stay at if you're Doc Rivers.
Especially if you've got Paul George and Kawhi, it can turn into an isolation fest.
Very fast. And
very quickly.
And then you're relying on Reggie Jackson to make your plays for you if the other guys aren't isolating well. I think that this team is flawed. I've been saying that, but Doc Rivers could be the guy who kind of glues it all together. So you're going to need A+ performance from Paul George, A+ performance from Doc Rivers. And then I think, Joe Kim and those guys are kind of like, if they come, it's nice, but we don't necessarily need them to win it all.
Lakers-Clippers, July 30th. Cannot wait for that. Let's go to the next West team here, the Houston Rockets. Another interesting team. I think when you take an East team and a West team that is most intriguing with this NBA reset. I talked about the 76ers. I think on the other hand, you've got the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets come into here with a healthy Russell Westbrook that was playing the best in his career, in your opinion. Was he better than his MVP year at that little window?
I would go, if you're watching us on the YouTube right now, I would go MVP Russ is here. And then the last 2 months, Russ, for the Rockets is like right here.
We know what the Rockets need to win a championship. They need to continue to shoot the ball well, and they need to have Russell Westbrook play at an extremely high level. This might be it for D'Antoni and Brett Brown.
Yeah.
See what they can do here. Let's start with Houston and what is necessary for them to make a deep playoff run.
What's necessary for them to stay on the theme of Westbrook would be he has to continue with the attack mentality.
To the rim. No jump shots.
I saw Russ the other night. Maybe it was because of scrimmage. He was getting some jumpers up. He hit one, but stop. Stop it.
It's the worst thing to happen to a team for Russ. When he makes his first shot, if you're an opponent, you're just like, yes, continue to shoot. You'll live with it.
The mid-range, he's fine on the mid-range. He's killing it. The 3-ball is what we're talking about. Stop the 3-ball. Cut it out, Russ. Russ Westbrook's one of my favorite players. Probably my second favorite player. Cut it out with the 3-ball. I think that the luxury for this Houston Rockets team is like kind of the bubble atmosphere. There's no fans. There's no we could go 0 for 26 and you could feel the silence in the building. Like the Houston fans who have been through it before and they kind of get tight and everything, you could play super loose.
Yeah,
so they had the luxury of being in the bubble, and now we have these guys like a Ben McLemore who he's not going to be afraid to play in this setting in an empty gym.
Yeah.
I think they have a lot of empty gym hoopers. Russ, Harden, PJ Tucker, Robert Covington, who we both love and has been playing lights out for them. I just think they have a lot of empty gym hoopers, and even Austin Rivers when they come back. So I think the luxury for this team would be just the atmosphere, and the necessity would be, we know what Harden's going to give us. Russ needs to stay in attack mode.
The luxury for me would continue to play well with Robert Covington. Robert Covington came from Minnesota. I really liked him. I didn't think that he would be able to play the 4 and average 12, 13 rebounds. I mean, that's what he's been able to do. He's been able to stretch the floor with them, make his shots consistently, and defensively is where I think is his most underrated attribute. That's how he came into the league, being a defensive guy first. He sort of has that Jimmy Butler path that's where he was what he was known for, and then he built up his game into a consistent jump shooter. If Robert Covington can continue his play the way he finished in March and the way that the Houston was playing, it'd be a huge luxury for them.
Absolutely.
But the necessity, and it's going to sound basic and generic, but James Harden needs to not only be efficient from the offensive side of the ball, but he needs to really dig deep defensively, because teams are going to go after him late in the fourth quarter. We know what he looks like now. I'm very curious to see what the reaction from Jokic and Harden are going to be after they lost that weight. Will it help them late in the fourth quarter? We know how Harden is offensively. He goes 100%. He puts up his shots. He gets his. But I think a lot of times late in games, you'll see the opposing coach pick on Harden in spots in the isolation game late in the fourth quarter because he drains all of his stuff offensively. I think right now for Harden, it's about balancing it and figuring out that happy medium. You have a guy like Russ Westbrook. You have 4 guys around you that can shoot threes. Make sure to trust your teammates. That should be the necessity. Trust your teammates if you're James Harden. And I think if he's able to do that, Houston can beat the Lakers or Clippers in a best of 7 if they're all in that cohesive unit the way they played in the months of February and March.
I'm dying for the Clippers-Rockets matchup. Just the Paul George, Westbrook.
It's a great dynamic.
Yeah, I just think the two teams match up really well against each other. And I didn't even mention Eric Gordon, who had a phenomenal playoffs last season.
Yeah.
I think the Rockets, they're a team that's kind of ready to go here. I'm very excited about Houston.
We'll switch to the East here. We'll go with the top tier teams. Let's go to the Bucks, Celtics, and we can fiddle around maybe with the Raptors. Let's first start with the top seeded Bucks. Necessary.
What's necessary for them to win? We can't have, I just spoke about Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton can't have another series like he had last year against Toronto where he averaged, I think, 12 or 13 points and was kind of abysmal.
Yeah.
We need Chris Middleton to play exactly how he has been playing in order, and I say we as if I'm a Bucks fan, like the Bucks need Chris Middleton to just play how Chris Middleton plays, continue this stellar season. He is the piece, because we know Giannis is going to be great. And we know the defense is going to key in on Giannis and not let him get all these easy things in the playoffs. So it's easy for me to just sit here and say, oh, well, the shooters have to make their shots, right? Kyle Korver is also on the team, going to have to come in and make shots. Dante DiVincenzo going to have to make shots. It's a make or miss league. We talk about it all the time. I think just more so than anything, and it is kind of the basic answer, but in the playoffs, you need that second superstar. You need that second consistent scorer. I need Chris Middleton to not only play at how he's been playing and keep that, level. I need him to take it up another notch if they really want to win the championship.
I don't know if he can. Can he take it to another level?
I think he could get in a zone where he's scoring 22 a game on like a efficient 45-50% from the field, 40% from 3. Like, I think he has it in him. He's one of the best shooters in the NBA, so I definitely think he does.
The luxury. Well, actually, I'll first with the necessity for the Bucks. Forget the players, forget the 2 option, the 3 option. I think this falls on Mike Budenholzer. I think he needs to have the ability to adjust during the game. During the regular season, there's not a lot of adjusting you have to do when you're the Milwaukee Bucks and you have a guy like Giannis. But when you are going through a best of 7 with the minds of a Brad Stevens and a Nick Nurse, you are, and I'll be honest with you, out of those 3, Mike Budenholzer would be the last on my list. I would probably take Brad Stevens, Nick Nurse. You could flip-flop him. I think Mike Budenholzer to me is the clear 3rd. Mike Budenholzer is going to have to make adjustments during the game. There's been multiple times where I've seen them in the postseason where the Boston Celtics, whoever it may be that they're playing, figure out a way to contain Giannis. And then everyone sort of looks around because Giannis is such a significant playmaker. Well, they almost like, what's next kind of thing. Mike Budenholzer needs to take charge and have a counter when that happens, because it's going to happen, Teach. They're going to get into a situation where they're going to go 3-4 minutes where they're not going to score. What is the adjustment going to be from Mike Budenholzer? That's my number one for the necessity. The luxury, you got to have guys like I listed that I have suspect tendencies about, like an Eric Bledsoe. He's got to be able to play well for this team. Guy like Dante DiVincenzo, younger, but a luxury to this team. I think you know what you're getting from the 1-2 with Middleton and Giannis, but the luxury is getting significant minutes from DiVincenzo, getting high scoring from Bledsoe, efficiency. A lot of these guys, those third options we talk about, they need to be consistent from the field efficiency-wise, and Bledsoe sort of tends to lose track of that. I remember Terry Rozier took him to school about 2-3 years ago. They have to be able to have a third, fourth option that they can get from the bench. That would be a luxury for them.
I think I forgot to mention the luxury here. The Bucks, the entire season, they've been able to play 9-10 guys because Giannis and Middleton and their starters only play 30 minutes a game.
They're killing teams.
These guys, they blow teams out. The highest, point differential in the NBA. They just don't play guys like in the playoffs. Giannis in the finals, he's gonna have to play 45 minutes a game in the finals.
Yeah.
But right now, early on in these 8 games coming back in the first round of the playoffs, the other guys are going to have their chance to get their footing and be ready for whereas if their number is called, they're going to have to come in and hit shots and play good defense and get steals and rebounds and dive on the floor. So I think the luxury of this team would be everyone is going to get, their footing under them, whereas teams, maybe that are struggling for seeding spots and things of that nature are going to have to go, pedal to the floor, pedal to the metal right away and really start playing their guys 40 minutes a game, whereas the Bucks, they're still going to be in there 30 minutes a game up until maybe the second round of the playoffs, semifinals, and so on.
Aside from what I'm getting from Middleton, aside from the bench, I think another huge question with Milwaukee is, since they coast, I would say, 90% of the time against these teams, does it hurt them when they get into a situation where everything is a little bit tighter? You are in a close game in the fourth quarter, and when the times where you put out Robin Lopez and these different players to finish out a game, does it hurt them that they don't have that close game experience that, say, a Laker team has been in, or say like a Raptors team has been in? That's sort of my big question going into the NBA restart with the Milwaukee Bucks.
I think that is the most valid question of them all, and I think that's what we're going to find out here.
All right, let's switch to my team, the Boston Celtics in the East here. I think for the necessary purposes, I think that Jason Tatum needs to continue. This is the only team in the league that has 3 guys that average 20-plus points per game in Kemba, Jalen, and Jason Tatum. But Jason Tatum, who has ascended in that month of February, and I believe that the way he looks and the way that he works, I think that he can continue that level of play going into this, but I think that's definitely necessary. The Celtics go as far as Jason Tatum goes.
Yeah.
I love Jaylen Brown. I love Kemba Walker. I love Tice, and I love Brad Stevens. But Jason Tatum is what is going to ascend the Boston Celtics to a deep playoff team or a first-round exit. I don't know, depending on the matchup. But if they do go up against a Miami Heat team, it's not an easy first-round series. A lot of times, it's usually like you had the Bucks last year that get the Detroit Pistons. It's a 4-game sweep. With the Celtics, it's got to be Jason Tatum. It's got to be necessary for him to continue his game that he had in February into this NBA restart. The luxury, getting Marcus Smart to shoot. I feel like every team's got one of those players that is a little thinks their game is far superior than the others. We had Eric Bledsoe, we had Reggie Jackson, we had J.R. Smith, Deion Waiters. Now we have Marcus Smart, who can take questionable shots at times, but he is a leader on that team. I think for the Celtics, a luxury is for him to shoot efficiently from 3. If he's able to do that, we know how good he is and pesky he is defensively. Great leader, I think the vocal leader on that Celtic team. A luxury to the Celtics would be if Marcus Smart can take and make smart shots in this postseason.
I couldn't agree more with your luxury. I would also add in, I think that Enes Kanter, if he could play in these series, and there's Enes Kanter defensively.
Huge question.
Huge question. That's the problem. If they run into a series, a team where Kanter's at least could give you 10, 15 minutes a game off the bench scoring, because we know he could come in and score the ball. So I think a big luxury would be Marcus Smart kind of toning it back a little bit, playing defense, saying, okay, I'm going to let Tatum and Hayward and Kemba and Jalen and all these other guys score points. I'm just going to play defense and rebound. And also, if Enes Kanter could find his way into some minutes in the playoffs, whereas in the regular season, we kind of like Kanter, but in the playoffs, it's really hard to play him. What's necessary for this team to really win it, if they want to win it all and go super deep into the playoffs, I think defensively, you're going to have to see Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown take it to a whole nother level.
I agree, yeah.
Tatum has been phenomenal off the ball this season. He's been good on the ball. I think
top 5. I was shocked when I saw his rating defensively. Top 5.
Yeah, and I think Jaylen Brown has the potential to be a phenomenal on-ball defender as well. Like I've always said, Jaylen Brown kind of reminds me of like a young Kawhi Leonard. Like that's just kind of the vibe I got from him. I think that this team, look at the perimeter players. You're going to be going up against Jimmy Butler, Giannis, Pascal Siakam, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris. Like you're going to have to
be tough.
Those guys, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, those are going to be their assignments. So what's necessary for the Celtics is going to be those guys, Jalen and Jason, are going to have to not only play great offensively, they're going to have to defend and stop the other team's superstar, because in the playoffs, it comes down to a few possessions, who could get what stop. Maybe you'll put Marcus Smart on some of these ball handlers, on some of these guys, but at the end of the day, I think it's really going to come down to how Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown defend, especially because I know you like Tyson and we like Tyson, but the rim protection isn't there.
Took it out of my word.
So you're going to have really good perimeter defense.
That was going to be my next thing, Tease. The only thing that really concerns me about this Boston Celtics team, love the point guard, love Kemba, love the veteran leadership there, love Jason Tatum, Brown, and I think Hayward can fill some spots and take good minutes and shots. But the anchor in the front court, that is the most concerning part about this, because you are going to go up against Bam, Giannis, Embiid. Are you going to be able, Daniel Tice or Enes Kanter, who I'm not a huge fan of, are you going to be able to rim protect? Because that's what the hole in the defense is. We know how good perimeter-wise the Celtic defense is, but once you get by your man and you're going to the basket, you see Enes Kanter there, I'm going up there and I'm putting it on his head. When you go on to these other teams like a Lakers, who have tremendous depth and height in their front court, JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, those guys are bad mothers. You don't want to go around the rim against them, even in 90s basketball. Like, no, this is still a really good lineup that the Lakers throw out there front court-wise. Can the Celtics sort of figure out ways to maybe stop penetration and not let them get to the rim?
I do think that's what the big question is for them.
Toronto Raptors.
I think what's necessary, if they want to win a championship, because they're another team defending champions, they're not going to be satisfied with anything except for another championship.
And they have something to prove. I think they're, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think with championship teams you have to have sort of a calling card, something that is pushing you. For the Bucks, they feel like to keep Giannis here, they got to stay here. For LeBron, I'm getting older. For the Toronto Raptors, I think it's for the ones that said, oh, the Raptors are going to rebuild, they're done, they can't win without Kawhi. They've got drive and motivation going into this.
I agree 100%, and that brings me to Pascal Siakam. Kawhi left, everyone kind of wrote them off, myself included. I said probably by the deadline, when we were talking about the over-unders for the season, I said there is a scenario where they trade off everybody, Lowry, Gasol, everyone, right? I think Pascal Siakam, in order for the Raptors to go to the finals, he is going to have to be the best player in the Eastern Conference in the playoffs. I think he has that potential. I think when you look at a guy like Giannis and the way that he impacts the game, I think Pascal Siakam could impact the game in almost every single way Giannis could. Obviously not as good as Giannis, but length, ability to he shoots the three better than Giannis. You're going to have to see a little bit more playmaking out of Siakam in these playoffs. Defensively, we saw what he did last year in the playoffs. He's phenomenal. And I think he's a guy who's been through the moment. He's won a championship. He was the second best player definitely on the Raptors last year. In that finals, Kawhi was the best player. Then you want to say Clay, Steph. Yeah, he's just in that mix where Siakam could take his name from just an all-star to now superstar, top 7, 8 player in the league kind of status right here, if he does get the Raptors back to the finals. And I think for that to happen, he's going to have to take his game to another level and be that best player in the East.
I think a luxury for the Raptors right now is if you can get 15, 20 points out of Kyle Lowry. Because you saw it last year, he was up and down, but I think the consistent trend with the Raptors championship run, yes, Kawhi was great, yes, Siakam was great, yes, Nick Nurse was great, but Kyle Lowry played really damn well in the finals, and I thought did a tremendous job on Steph.
Yeah.
You know? So I think a luxury, I don't necessarily think that you need a guy like Kyle Lowry to score you 20, 25 points per game to win a championship. I think it's a huge luxury, though, if he can shoot the ball well from three. He's penetrating. You know what you're going to get defensively. You got to give him credit there. He is a pit bull defensively.
Absolutely.
But I think that would just still be a luxury. The necessity for the Raptors, we talk about Siakam. We talk about these other guys that you know what you're going to get from. The wild card last year was Fred VanVleet.
Yeah.
When he started to make threes, and he was awful early on. I remember they didn't even know if they could play VanVleet at times. All it took was one game. He started taking and making shots. He had his kid.
Father Fred.
There
That's
you
what
go.
They called him, Father Fred.
And Father Fred became a dad of the entire league because he shot the out of the ball.
Yeah.
It was really, really good. We know about him defensively. Another sort of a pit bull, undersized. This team plays with a huge chip on their shoulder. Sort of guys that were developed more than highly touted out of college or whatever. I mean, VanVleet is an undrafted free agent.
And no lottery picks.
So exactly. So this is a team that takes a lot of pride in their work ethic. I think that VanVleet needs to be at the level that he was in that deep playoff run for the Raptors to make their run.
I would agree with that. I think Fred VanVleet, he had an incredible finals last year, and he transferred over to this year. He's having a really good year as well. Another guy who's kind of banged up a little bit this year. Like we said earlier, the Raptors, they're all healthy. They're ready to go. Super excited to watch that team play.
Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this, Teach.
Yeah.
Okay. We can start with who we are predicting in the conference finals, bearing the seeding stays the same, or we could go into our best bets here. We're getting to the meat and potatoes of this. Where do you want to go here, Teach?
Let's do our predictions, then we'll finish it out with the best bets.
All right, TJ Severa. I have been waiting to do this for a while now. So, barring what we know now, and I will read the standings to everyone, this is subject to change for the most part, but right now we have the Bucks at the 1 spot, Raptors 2, Celtics 3, Heat 4, Pacers 5, Sixers 6, Brooklyn 7, Magic 8, and then in the West we've got the Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Jazz, Thunder, Rockets, Mavericks, and Grizzlies. So, Teej, we will begin with you. Western Conference Final. Let's hear it.
If this stays right now, I'm going to pick the Lakers to just advance, okay? They're going to be in their Western Conference Finals. If it ends just like this, you'll have Denver versus the Rockets in the first round. Now, is Denver going to come out and play with that big lineup against the small ball Rockets? Would be one of the craziest things we've ever seen on an NBA court.
Yeah.
I'll take the Rockets in that series. I'm going to take the Clippers to advance as well, okay?
Yeah, and then a really interesting series.
I would take upset. I'll go Oklahoma City over Utah in that first round. So I'll have Lakers in the Western Conference semifinals. I'll have Lakers OKC, and I will have Clippers beating the Mavs, and I'll have the Rockets beating the Nuggets. So I'll have Clippers Rockets.
Okay.
That series, I'll go upset again. I'll take the Rockets. I'm going to roll with my guy Russ. I'm going to say the Clippers haven't figured it out. Their chemistry's still shaky. I'll go Rockets, Lakers, because the Lakers are going to beat Oklahoma City. Rockets, Lakers in my Western Conference Finals, where obviously, inevitably, LeBron James goes back and has another chance to win his 4th championship.
All right. Well, I didn't expect. I mean, we knew what you were going to do with the Lakers. I didn't expect what you were going to do with the Clippers.
I'm going to take... listen, I think I'm a firm believer in this. You need to hoop together. They haven't played, Steve. We know. You could... Even if it just comes to the park, right? If we come to the park, you could take 5 of the most talented people, right? But if Steve comes with his team that has been playing together since they were 5 years old... I'm gonna take the team that's been playing together. I like the teams that's been playing together. The Clippers, unless they show me something completely different and the talent is just too overwhelming, I need teams that have played together. Rockets have been playing all year together. Russ and Harden don't miss games. We know what they're about. I think they're going to break through and beat them.
It's going to sound generic. I don't really care. This is just the way I think everything is lined up. I still believe, and I actually think for the most part I agree with TJ's predictions up until the conference final. I like the Rockets beating the Nuggets if everything stays. Obviously the Lakers move on. Lakers are set in stone into the conference final. The Clippers can run into a little bit of issues, I think, with Houston, but I still think they're going to be able to fend them off just because of their depth and their size. I think they're going to be able to wear out Houston. I'm going to go Clippers-Lakers. That's my Western Conference Final. We will come back for predictions for that Western Conference Final. We'll right now move to the East. As we said before, we have our set-in-stone matchups that are right now, Tej. Let's start with the East. Who do you like here in the conference final?
I think you'll have, so I see the Eastern Conference standings right there. You'll have Milwaukee obviously move on. I'm picking Toronto over the Nets to move on. And then 3 versus 6, 76ers versus the Boston Celtics. I would take right now, give me the 76ers over the Celtics because what we talked about with the rim protection. I wouldn't be surprised if the Celtics win just off first instinct. Maybe I'm a little recency biased because I'm obsessed with what I saw from Ben Simmons and the 76ers the other day. I would take them to advance. The 4 or 5 matchup, give me Miami over Indiana. Then in the second round, you'd be looking at
Bucks.
Heat, Bucks. I'll take Milwaukee. Then you'd be looking at Sixers, Raptors. That's where really it comes down to. I'm gonna
rematch.
Go the rematch.
Ooh.
I'll go off the top of my head right now. If I had to pick, I'll take the 76ers to get there.
Wow.
So then
76ers Bucks for team.
So I'd have 76ers Bucks if this is how it stays. If this is how the standings stay, because I was thinking back to the West real quick. I think Utah might fall a little bit and Houston might move up. And if
that could change everything.
And if Houston has to play the Lakers in the second round, I'll have them gone. So
as long as we have our winners coming out of the East and West, I don't think the matchup matter. That's more important. I'm not going to hold it against you, TJ, if you don't get Jazz Clippers, right? You know, like it is what it is. All right. If everything stays the same, I am picking. I know we're supposed to wait to pick the winner.
Sorry.
I'm all in on the Celtics. I am all in on the Celtics. 43-21. They rank in the top 5 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. I think when I look at their head coach, I love Brad Stevens. I love this team. 3 guys score 20-plus points. That is consistently. That is, Jaylen Brown can have 30, they can win. Jason Tatum can have 15, they can win. I love that ability that they can win in different ways. We talked about the biggest question mark, and that is the front court. I am a huge believer in Daniel Tice. I've expressed that to you. I love Daniel Tice. Jason Tatum, I just think is on a different level right now. I think he continues his success. I don't think he stopped during quarantine. I think he's one of those guys that loves the game, loves to work. And I talked about the youth, man. The Boston Celtics are the NBA's 3rd youngest roster. So everything that I've sort of preached to you guys about thriving in chaos and youth, I'm going with the Boston Celtics here. I think they roll through the East, and I think it's going to be Bucks, Celtics. Give me the Celtics. Also, a little betting preview, plus 700. Already took that, Teach. Take the Boston Celtics to go to the NBA Finals.
I think the Celtics, everything you said, I do love them as a team. I love their players, love the coach.
Complete opposite. You have first round exit versus me going to the finals. So someone's going to be really wrong or really right.
Only because I think they match up horribly against the 76ers. In a 7-game series, how do you stop Embiid? I don't think they have a player. If Embiid just gets on the block and really punishes you, I don't think they have a player. I think Embiid could average something like 35, 40 points a game in that series. No joke. I really do believe that. So I just think that's the poor matchup for them. If they could avoid the Sixers, then I can see what you're talking about.
Your pick in the Eastern Conference Finals is, and then how many games?
I'll take the Bucks over the Sixers in 6.
Okay.
And then in the Western Conference Finals, I will take the Lakers over the Rockets in 6 as well.
Okay. I will take, as I said, I'll take the Celtics over the Bucks in 6. And then I will take the Clippers over the Lakers in 6. And that's how we have
doesn't even give
the NBA Finals. That's how we have the NBA Finals. Where you have the you have the Lakers, and you have the Bucks. Correct?
Yeah, that's really it.
And I'm at the Celtics and the Clippers. I will take the Clippers to win in 6. And you have Kawhi Leonard, 3 NBA titles, 3 different teams, 3 NBA Finals MVPs with 3 different teams. Maybe cracks the top 10 of all time.
Same thing with LeBron. I think what's really interesting about this, Steven, I kind of wanted to do a little bit of the legacy talk, and I'll do it as we get into it right now real quick before we do our best bets. We've never had someone in the NBA have 3 Finals MVPs on 3 different teams. Kind of weird how in the same season you could have LeBron and Kawhi, like 2 guys are going after it, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's 2 scenarios where it could happen. So I just think that kind of speaks to where the game is at today and how, mobile it is and what everything happened. And we could talk about that forever. But what I want to talk about here is kind of what you just talked about, the legacy.
Okay.
Kawhi Leonard, right? Start with him. If Kawhi Leonard wins the championship this year, he will move into a lot of people's top 15, top 10s. I think top 5 is a little bit ridiculous.
It's a little premature.
What hurts Kawhi is the overall counting stats. Now, how much emphasis do you put on that is per person. It's per how you value things like this. I think longevity matters. I've said that 1,000 times. I think LeBron doing this in year 17 matters greatly. I think the fact that he's going to finish as the all-time leading scorer in the NBA, in the history of the NBA, it matters. Whereas a guy like Kawhi Leonard, he could have 3 Finals MVPs on 3 different teams, but he doesn't average more points per game career-wise than Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah.
So where do you really value it is kind of the question. I think what you should do, and correct me if I'm wrong, correct me if you feel differently here, you should take the guy at his peak. What was he at his peak? So what's Kawhi at his peak? Is Kawhi at his peak? Would you take, if you could say, I'm getting the best game from Kawhi Leonard, I know I'm getting Kawhi's best game, how many guys do you take before that game from Kawhi Leonard? So I think that's how you should do it.
Well, I think when you're trying to unfold their legacy, and I think you make a lot of valid points about, well, first, I hate the whole Andrew Wiggins thing because that's where just stats are just so meaningless to me. But you have to look at, I think, the way the player came up within the system, right? Like, let's just compare Kawhi Leonard to LeBron James. LeBron James, highly touted, high school, was supposed to be, and is, the chosen one, right?
Yeah.
Like, that wasn't the narrative with Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard was a quote-unquote Mahomes project, right? Like, that's what Kawhi Leonard was. He was defense first. The player development process with the San Antonio Spurs, you got to give a ton of credit. But Kawhi Leonard wasn't supposed to be what Kawhi Leonard is today. I mean, I don't think in a million years the Spurs could have imagined that he would be in the place he is today. So I think when you're sort of determining a legacy, there's no question about it. LeBron James, and we've talked about it, is the greatest player of all time. Longevity counts. You can give me the rings, you can give me the 3 and 6, you can give me all of that. I want a guy that in his 17th year is on an MVP level.
Yeah.
When it comes to Kawhi Leonard, I think he cracks the top 10 because of how high his peak is. I think in a 3-year window or a 4-year window, does it top LeBron James's 4-year peak? I don't know, but I know this for a fact. If Kawhi Leonard, I would take not a lot of players over this little window that Kawhi Leonard's have. That it's not just 4 years of really good basketball. It's 4 years of dominant basketball where you can win 3 rings on 3 different teams. That holds weight. I don't care what he did in his rookie year or his second year. It's those peak years that I look at. There's a baseball player, Don Mattingly, who there's a lot of argument about because he didn't play a consistent amount of years. He only played X amount of years and put up these amount of numbers. Look, if 5 years, 4 years, and you're top 3 in baseball, that needs to mean something. Sometimes injuries can derail a person's career, but I don't think that should be taken away when it comes to determining a legacy.
And what you were at your peak.
Correct. Because you can't control that type of stuff. Like the Kawhi Leonard, load management stuff, I don't know. Like, how much are you going to hold that against him if he wins another ring? I mean, you're not going to remember Kawhi Leonard for his load management if he wins another title. I don't think you do it now.
I think with Kawhi, and just to wrap it up before we get on with the bets here, I think the last thing I want to say on Kawhi Leonard is his ring. Okay, you could dissect it because when you start getting into the top 15, top 10, that's what we do. We start to nitpick. We start to dissect. His first ring, he's the 4th option on that Spurs team. Yes, he wins Finals MVP, but we've seen Andre Iguodala win Finals MVP.
He was the best player on that Spurs team in that specific series, though. It's not like the whole the Durant argument about is that ring really validated? Well, he was the best player at if he rode Steph's coattail and was the 3rd leading scorer. No, Kevin Durant was the best player on the floor. We give him his props. Same thing with Kawhi Leonard. I give him props because he was the best player in that series.
I don't think that ring holds as much weight, though, as if this one would.
Or Toronto. I think, of course not.
And then in the Toronto one, you could obviously nitpick, which I will. You could nitpick and say, well, Durant was out, and Clay had 35,
and you also can they pick LeBron.
Yeah, no, of course. And that's what.
Yeah,
and when
you
you
do that
become,
with everything.
when you become in that top 10, top 15 area, then that's what you do. We start nitpicking, breaking you down. I think Kawhi, 29 years old, if he wins this year, is on that path to becoming top 7, top 8 player of all time. Right now, it's a little bit premature for me, but I do think at his peak, Kawhi Leonard, one of the 5 best defenders in the history of the NBA, Kawhi Leonard has the opportunity to be one of the greatest players ever. I think he just needs to have, maybe a regular season MVP in the near future. Some things going on, but in terms of just overall talent, on any given day, if I get his best game, I don't think there's many people in the history of the game that could match it.
Last segment here as we wrap up our Triple Threat podcast, Restart NBA special here on YouTube, and also we're going to post the audio of the pod as well. Last segment here, we're going to do our NBA best bets. We are gamblers. We are back. Super excited to bet the NBA again. The overs are, I'm going to smash them as soon as they get in. We're going to go parlays. But we're going to do futures here for you guys. Teach, you want to start here? Tell us what you like. Tell us the number, and give us your perspective.
These odds are brought to you by DraftKings, so they could be a little bit different on other books and things of that nature. But I'm just going to, I'll rattle mine off right here for you, Steve. Pelicans to be the 8 seed plus 300. So that means that they get into that 9 spot, that 9-8 seed spot, and they're in that play-in tournament. Remember, the 8 seed has to win. So it's the 8 seed versus the 9 seed for the play-in spot for the 8 seed of the actual playoffs. The 8 seed has to win 1 game, whereas the 9 seed has to win 2 games.
And the Pelicans need to finish within 3.
They have to finish within 3 games of the 8 seed in order to get that 9 spot. I think they will either be playing the Blazers or the Grizzlies, who are currently in that spot. The Grizzlies right now. I'll take Zion, the hype the NBA wants it to be in there. I expect favorable calls for them. Steve talked about the youth before. I think it favors them. I think Pelicans to be the 8 seed plus 300 is a great bet. I'm going to go the Lakers over 5.5 wins plus 110 on DraftKings. It's kind of weird that it's plus 110, but I think this could be strictly because the Lakers, if they beat the Clippers on Thursday, they're up 6.5 games with 7 games to play, so you would assume rest. So there could be some rest situation where LeBron and Anthony Davis don't play, and that could be why it doesn't hit. But if they do play 7 or 8 games, I think the Lakers are winning at least 6 of them. So
Lakers have the second hardest schedule in terms of percentage-wise for the restart. That doesn't scare you?
No, we looked at, on last podcast, we looked at what I thought it would be, and I said 7 wins, so I'll minus 1 because they'll probably lose a game that I think they'll win. So I'll give them 6. I think 6 is the right number for it to be at. The one that we just talked about, Bucks to win the conference, minus 167. I think that is crazy value. Minus 167, it should be, in my opinion, like minus 250, minus 300 kind of thing. I think minus 167 is great. But if you are not a believer in the Bucks and you kind of want to be on the Raptors or the Celtics, I know, Steve, they're plus 700. The Raptors are plus 700 as well. I will definitely be dabbling on Raptors plus 700. My last 2 bets, Lakers-Bucks finals matchup plus 310. That's who I think is going to be there. That's who I'll take. Also, Lakers-Raptors plus 1900. That's my favorite bet of them all.
If you're all in on the LA teams and it's a safe bet, I think, in a lot of people's mind, hence the minus 167 for the Bucks to win the East. You parlay, or you don't parlay, you make 2 separate bets, Lakers, Bucks, Clippers, Bucks. You get plus money. I think that's definitely something to keep an eye on if you're a believer in that. I am not, so that's why we're going here as an East. And I honestly, I disagree about the odds with the East. I will never take, like, a team that's favored like that, especially with what has happened. I get that the Bucks are favorites, but after what happened last year, and I think the East has gotten better than last year, for them to be minus 167, I just disagree. I just don't think it's worth, the juice is not worth the squeeze, in just my opinion.
Yeah,
I don't think that I just don't think that the Bucks should be that favored with the East with how many teams they have. So I'm going to go with the Boston Celtics plus 700 to win the East. We got one guy that's saying they're going to lose in the first round matchup-wise. We respect his opinion. And I have me that's saying they're going to go to the finals here. I think plus 700 is tremendous value. I already bet it. If you are a believer in the Celtics, like I am, 3 guys, plus 20 in the scoring department, you've got a great coach. You've got youthful players that I think are really on the come up right now. I think the Celtics are a bad matchup for the Bucks. I'll just walk you through it really quickly. If I had to take the top 6 players from each teams, I think the Celtics have 4 of the 6, right? You've got Giannis at 1, Tatum at 2, Middleton at 3, and then you got Jaylen Brown, Kemba, and Gordon Hayward as the next. I think you get 4 of the 6 best players. I think the Celtics are a great matchup for the Bucks. So I'm going to take the Celtics at plus 700 to win the East. And then I'm going to fade. This is, I can't believe what I watched with the Nets. You talked about just brutal, atrocious. I mean, listen, 2.5 wins. That is really gracious for them to put them on FanDuel like that. I'm going to take the Nets to finish under 2.5 wins for this reset at minus 115. I'll give you the schedule really quickly, but if you just took any eye test or if you weren't on drugs and you were watching sober that summer league, you don't know how this team's going to come within 15 points. I mean, this is a team you have to fade. You have to fade. Bertans out and Bradley Beal's out.
Yeah.
Got to fade them. But the Nets especially, new coach, I don't know what the hell they were doing with Kenny Atkinson. I wish the Timberwolves didn't bring in Saunders. I would have picked him up in a heartbeat. Fade the Nets. Nets are bad. I mean, they're going to be double-digit underdogs, I think, almost every night here. But their first game against the Magic, I think that's a loss. The Wizards, the worst. Go do something else. Don't sit home and watch that. Bucks are going to get beat by 25. At Celtics, you're going to lose by 10 plus points. Kings loss. Clippers loss. Magic, I think, loss again.
Portland
and Blazers loss. Guys, I'm looking in the Strom FanDuel betting. This should be probably 1.5. I think that's gracious. I really do. So the under in the total wins for the Brooklyn Nets. Under 2.5.
I love that. I think the only team that the Wizards or the Nets could beat are each other. And I think, listen, if the Wizards lose that game, I think the Wizards lose out. If the Nets lose that game, I think the Nets lose out as well. So I would take both of those teams under.
Stinks for the Wolves fans. There's so many of us here. But if the Brooklyn Nets don't make the playoffs, we don't have a protected lottery for
so you need
this
them
year.
To make the playoffs.
So we need them to make the playoffs because you know what happens? We make the pitch to Phoenix. Hey, we'll give you our first round pick and our protected lottery. Bring in Devin Booker. We'll be here for the playoffs next season.
All right, guys. I think that's going to do it for this. If you enjoyed the YouTube content, definitely comment, let us know.
We'll do more of it.
Yeah, hit us back. This was super easy setup, not difficult at all for us to do. So definitely something we can do more of in the future. We appreciate you if you made it to this point of the podcast. As always, make sure to subscribe to Steve's YouTube channel that this will be posted on. Yep. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate the podcast, all that good stuff. Steve, you want to say anything before we go?
We're doing a Periscope or Twitch.
Instagram Live, whatever.
I want to get a little into it with the Clippers, Lakers. For
yeah,
the
we'll do a
post games. For sure.
Yeah.
Yes, let's do like a post game thing, either IG Live or we'll figure something out. So we'll catch you guys. Maybe not this. We're not going to record any audio this week, but we'll talk to you guys Thursday night for the recap. But hey, thanks everyone for listening. Teach, finish it up.
Yep, that's it. Steve pretty much just wrapped it up. We'll catch you guys on Thursday. Peace, everybody.
Peace.